All right, welcome to our third and final session of Serving Our Athletes. Some housekeeping before we get started. This session will be recorded. As a participant, everyone is muted. If you have a question, please use the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen or maybe on the top if you're on a tablet. If you see a question that you would also like an answer to, you can upvote the question so we can see that multiple participants are interested in the same question. Melissa will present for about 20 to 25 minutes, and then Lindsay will ask any questions from the Q&A section for Melissa to address. Recordings of the sessions can be found on USTA.com and on the Serving Our Athletes news page. Let's get started. USTA Missouri Valley is fortunate to partner with Children's Mercy Sports Medicine Center, which is nationally ranked by U.S. News and World Report. Today's session will focus on nutrition with Melissa Meregh. I'm going to turn it over to Melissa.
Well, thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here today to talk to you guys about nutrition. My name's Melissa Meregh, and I'm a registered dietitian, and I'm also board certified in sports nutrition. So love talking about this topic. Hopefully everyone was able to listen to Dr. Harvey and Becky's presentations last week. They both provide lots of helpful information. So today we're going to talk about why it's important to start thinking about nutrition now rather than waiting until you're able to start playing again. We're also going to talk about what to consider when returning back to a training schedule, talk about some good, healthy, balanced fuel options. We're going to talk about hydration and the importance of making sure you're drinking enough, and then some good meal and snack ideas to pack while you're training. There's lots of funny memes out there right now, and I thought this one was kind of fitting. I think we've all likely felt like this at some point, wondering what day it is, what month we're in, and what's happening in our state at the moment. And of course, when Amazon's going to get here with our chocolate. So truthfully, though, it's hard not knowing what's going to happen in upcoming weeks and months and when everyone's going to get to return to sports again. And the unknowns can be really hard. So one of the things that we can control in all of this is what we're putting in our body and what we're doing to stay in shape and to stay healthy. We've definitely had a lot of downtime lately too, and while this can be extremely frustrating to athletes, it can actually have some benefits as well. Rest can provide that essential time, that time that we never have, that there never seems to be enough of. Well, now we have it, and that can allow you to make sure your muscles are well fueled and that you've replenished those muscle glycogen stores so that whenever you're able to return to your sport again, you'll be able to go, you'll be ready to go. And then it's important to remember recovery from exercise is just as important as the exercise itself. So we really have to have that downtime and those days off. Most of the schools are over now, and if yours isn't, it should be ending soon. And now the idea of returning to sports is more of a reality than it was in the early weeks. So if you haven't already, it's time to start thinking about a schedule, or as Becky said, a system, and really starting to put that into place. And that's going to include making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're eating healthy, and staying hydrated. So why is sleep so important? Well, sleep, or vitamin Z, as it's sometimes called, can be one of the best performance enhancers. Lack of sleep can have detrimental effects on our performance. And making sure you're getting an adequate amount of sleep can help athletes to train harder, recover faster, and perform better. So how much is enough? As Dr. Harvey said, teens need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep each night, and not getting enough sleep can affect your appetite and your food choices. After 2 nights with only 4 to 5 hours of sleep, our appetite can increase by about 20%. And what can happen with that is we may start snacking more, which can lead to taking in additional calories that our body doesn't necessarily need. And then we can also make food choices that aren't necessarily the best, and that might lead to even eating less fruits and vegetables. Sometimes it's hard for athletes to think about why we should eat better or think about nutrition in general if we're not back to playing 100% yet. But it's important to make sure that your nutrition is adequate now so that you'll be ready to go when the season starts. So we also have to remember that at this time we're still using our muscles on a daily basis, even if you're not training like you're used to. No matter whether you're exercising or not, it's still important to eat meals and snacks on a regular basis. And as you start thinking about increasing the amount of tennis you're playing, it's important to think about ramping up your nutrient intake too. Hopefully you would never go to a match without practicing for weeks before that match starts. So you also shouldn't head out to practice without making sure your body has adequate nutrient stores. So before you head out for a run or to hit balls or to work on your serves, it's important to think about when you ate last. It's going to be hard to train at your best without having any fuel in your tank. Dr. Harvey discussed training to train, but you can only train at your best if you fueled at your best. And that's really why it's important to be thinking about what you're eating now rather than waiting until the season has officially restarted. It makes sense to gradually ramp up your activity level and your training, so it makes sense to also gradually ramp up your nutrient intake. You don't have to go from 0 to 100, just start with a few small changes at a time and work your way up. So what does healthy eating look like? You really want to make sure you're eating 3 meals and 2 to 3 snacks a day. It's very important not to skip meals to make sure that you're meeting your body's energy and nutrient needs every day. Eating a variety of foods is also important. You may love bananas, and while bananas are really healthy, they don't contain the exact same nutrients as apples or oranges or strawberries or other kinds of fruits. So make sure you're eating a lot of different kinds of not only fruit, but also vegetables, protein sources, carbohydrates, etc. And that could be a place to start as far as making some nutrition changes. So maybe you just start thinking about your variety and ways to expand your meal or snack choices. And as you're planning your meals and snacks, it's important to make sure you're thinking about different food groups and not just having a meal or snack consisting of just carbohydrates or just protein. If you think about including colors on your plate, that can often lead towards choosing a variety of foods. So if you're having a sandwich, think about adding something green to it. So that could be some lettuce, or adding some tomato would add some red, or having cantaloupe on the side of it would add some orange, and a glass of milk would add some white. And that could be another place to start, just beginning to think about, is your snack all carbohydrates, or does it not contain any carbs? And how can you make that snack more balanced? Moderation is key as well. If you want some chocolate, have some chocolate. There isn't anything that athletes can't have or need to avoid. The most important thing is that you're not overdoing one food group or having more of one food than another, just because that may lead to neglecting other foods that your body needs. If you're eating ice cream every night as a bedtime snack, you might be missing out on the opportunity to get a bigger variety of nutrients. It's not that ice cream is bad by any means, but if you have ice cream one night, graham crackers with peanut butter another night, and yogurt with fruit another night, that'll give your body a broader range of nutrients and just overall help to increase your variety. It's also good to be mindful when eating. So listen to what your body is telling you when it comes to hunger and fullness. Eat whenever you're hungry and stop when you're full. It's important for us to stop and think about why we're eating. So are we having a snack because we're bored, or are we eating because it's been 2 to 3 hours and we're feeling hungry? Sometimes a good way to figure out if you're eating enough at a meal is to see how satisfied you feel after. So if you're hungry an hour after eating, you likely didn't eat enough. Satisfying meals and snacks should allow us to go for at least 2 to 3 hours without feeling hunger. And the same is true for fullness. If you feel overly full and uncomfortable after eating and you aren't hungry for several hours later, that's likely a sign that your body had more than it needed at that time. So thinking about our essential nutrients, you want to make sure that carbohydrates is your foundation for every meal. Carbohydrates is going to be our main fuel source for muscles during exercise. And this is what gets converted into the glycogen that our muscles use when we're out there playing. Carbohydrates can help to maintain our blood sugar, and they're also important for mental function and for delaying fatigue. So good choices would be whole grain bread, tortillas, pasta, rice, corn, potatoes, things like that. Protein provides the building blocks for our muscle mass, as well as for healthy growth and development. Our body will use protein as an energy source when carbohydrates have been depleted. It also provides us with the essential amino acids that our body can't make on its own. We have to get those from our food sources. It's also essential for developing new tissue and maintaining our existing tissue. And that's especially important during growth and injury repair, and just to control the normal wear and tear that goes on with our muscles on a daily basis. So lots of protein examples. Some could be lean beef, chicken, pork, turkey, fish, cheese, cottage cheese, beans, eggs, peanut butter, or other nut butters, milk, and yogurt. Fat's also important. Fat's going to be our fuel source during low intensity activity. Fat doesn't refuel our muscles, but it can enhance stamina and endurance to help us go longer. It also delivers essential fatty acids that our body can't make, and it helps us to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins, which are vitamins A, D, E, and K. So some examples of good healthy fat sources would be avocado, coconut, fatty fish, olives, oils and butter, nuts, seeds and nut butters, cheese, cream cheese, sour cream, and salad dressing. You want to make sure you're thinking about fruits and vegetables too. The goal would be at least to have 5 servings a day. But if you're currently not eating any fruit at all, or you may only have 1 serving, you don't have to jump right up to those 5 servings. Just slowly start being mindful of how much you're eating now, and then you can just slowly start thinking about ways to increase your intake. If we eat enough fruits and vegetables throughout the day, that really gives our body all the vitamins and minerals that we need, and we don't necessarily need to take an additional supplement. So sometimes it's hard for athletes to find time to fit that many fruits and vegetables in the day. So just kind of start thinking about some ways to add them into foods that you're already eating maybe. So that might look like adding berries to cereal or to oatmeal, having dried fruit in trail mix, adding fruit to your yogurt, including vegetables on sandwiches or wraps, or having a side salad with your meal, or just kind of becoming more mindful of what you're eating. And again, thinking about that balance and including an apple or an orange on the side with a meal, or having veggies and hummus as a snack or as part of your snack. So the actual whole fruit and vegetable, adding that as well. As we've heard for years, breakfast is essential and may even be the most important meal of the day. And I do think that this is true, but I also think that just fueling your body throughout the day is equally as important. So when it comes to breakfast, you first need to make sure that there's time for breakfast. So if you aren't already, that means getting up earlier to make sure you have time to eat. And that likely means getting to bed earlier so to make sure you're getting enough sleep. So the amount that you have for breakfast might vary, and that's totally fine. If you aren't a morning person or a big breakfast eater, it's okay to have a small breakfast and then have a snack a little while later. If you plan to train in the morning, it's also okay to split your breakfast up and have half of it before you go play and have the rest when you get back. And that'll give your body some fuel while you're playing, but you won't feel that there's an uncomfortable amount of food that's sitting in your stomach. And so again, just thinking about balance and variety is important too. So breakfast ideas could be toast with avocado with some hard-boiled eggs on the side or on top and an orange. You could do some whole grain cereal with milk and bananas, a breakfast sandwich or breakfast burrito, which could either be store-bought or you can make them on your own with fruit and a glass of orange juice, English muffin or a bagel with peanut butter and jelly or cream cheese, strawberries and some chocolate milk. You could do a fruit and yogurt parfait with yogurt and granola and fresh fruit, or a smoothie made with fruit and yogurt and peanut butter toast, or something like oatmeal with blueberries and a glass of milk. And keep in mind, breakfast does not have to be breakfast foods. If that's a barrier to anyone eating breakfast, you can have leftovers or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something completely different. It's just important to eat something, and then eating something is just better than eating nothing at all. So lunch ideas could be soup and a sandwich with an apple, or you could do a wrap with pretzels and a banana. There are so many fun wrap ideas out there. Lots of recipes for like a BLT wrap or a chicken Caesar salad wrap. You could do like a chicken club or a Mediterranean type of a wrap, or you could just keep it simple and do some type of a deli meat, cheese, lettuce, and tomato with whatever your favorite spread might be on there. Could also do like a quinoa or rice bowl with chicken or really any kind of meat and some type of fruit on the side. Again, with the quinoa, you can be creative, or rice too. You can make it Mexican by adding like beans and corn and salsa, guacamole, or make that Mediterranean by adding Kalamata olives, cucumbers, and feta cheese. You could do a Greek yogurt with granola and berries on top, and then have some nuts and crackers on the side with that. A shrimp pasta with a side salad and a whole grain roll or breadstick with it, or just a sandwich, and then on the side have some veggies with hummus and a granola bar. Dinner options could be chicken, fish, beef, or pork with pasta, rice or quinoa with that, and veggies. So think something along the lines of like a salmon with asparagus and rice, or maybe chicken with quinoa and broccoli. You could do pasta with really any kind of meat, a side salad, and a breadstick or roll. Burritos or tacos with, again, any kind of meat, beans and rice, salsa, cheese, guacamole. Stir fry with chicken, shrimp, beef, pork, served over rice or noodles with veggies, or like a chicken sandwich with baked sweet potato fries and fruit, or soup in a bread bowl with a salad and an apple. And then of course, you can always pair a glass of milk with any of these for an additional nutrient boost. Lots of snack ideas. Again, just thinking about pairing up different kinds of food groups. So granola bar, cuties, and a glass of milk, an apple with peanut butter, fresh fruit with nuts, trail mix and yogurt, pretzels with cheese slices, a cheese stick with a piece of fruit, popcorn and a glass of chocolate milk, a bowl of whole grain cereal, crackers with cheese or peanut butter, or something like veggies with hummus. And you may need a bigger snack, or you may only have time for part of this, and then you want to have the rest later. So some of these options might be satisfied to some people, but if they aren't, you can always add more to it. Something that's somewhat easy to eat are like the Chobani flips that have the Greek yogurt on one side and then a topping on the other. And those come in tons of different flavors, and you can add a fruit to that, and then you've got a well-balanced little snack. Hopefully everyone's been drinking a lot of water already, but if you haven't been, now's a good time to think about hydration too. You definitely don't want to wait until tennis matches begin to start drinking more water. Even just a 1% loss in hydration can decrease athletic performance. So water is what you want to be drinking the most of throughout the day. It's perfectly fine to add lemons or other fruit to help flavor your water, especially if that helps you to drink more. So, but when we start thinking about activity, if you're going to be active for less than an hour, water's also fine to drink. You don't need anything more than that. But if you're going to be active for longer than an hour, you'll want to switch over to a sports drink. They will contain more carbohydrates and electrolytes, and that's going to help you avoid that complete muscle glycogen depletion, and that'll help you maintain performance and your mental function, and those are actually absorbed faster than just water alone. So a good way to find out whether you're adequately hydrated would be to check your urine. It should be light like straw and not a deep yellow color. It should also not have a strong smell. And I would recommend going ahead and just using a water bottle now, even if you're just hanging out around your house. Having that right there with you can remind you to drink, and it can also help you to be aware of how much you're drinking. So you might just want to start with like 64 ounces a day and then just see how you feel and what your urine's looking like. But if you're more active and it's hot outside, you're probably going to need more than that. So how much to drink when you're active? About 2 cups of water is what you should have like 1 to 2 hours before any activity. And then 10 to 20 minutes before, you're going to want to have another cup of water. And then, of course, keeping that water bottle on the court with you and trying to drink a little bit at each break. So about like a gulp is equivalent to about an ounce, just so you have a frame of reference for that. And then again, you're going to want the sports drinks if you're going to be out there for a longer amount of time or for more intense matches, or if you have multiple matches in one day. Either Gatorade or Powerade will work. They both contain the carbohydrates, the sodium, and the potassium that replaces the losses from sweating. So if you're going to be active for longer than an hour, either at practice or a tournament, or you have multiple matches in a day, you should definitely bring some food and drink with you. So bringing a bag and a cooler with lots of snacks or mini meals will help keep your energy level up the entire time. As you all know, it's hard enough just playing in that last match after you've been playing for a long time, especially if it's really hot. And so the last thing you want is to be low on energy during that last match. So the small amounts of carbohydrate-rich foods can help you replace those glycogen stores and help give you the boost to keep going. So ideally, you want to try to eat about 1 to 2 carbs every hour. And then, as we've been talking about, of course, it's important to make sure you're staying hydrated too. In a perfect world, we'd all have time for a sit-down breakfast, preferably one that's made for us, but that's not reality. Sometimes we have to take our breakfast on the go if you have an early match or if you have a practice that you have to get to. So you want to think about things that are easy to grab and quick to eat, but that are still nutritionally balanced. So thinking about carbohydrates and things that you can take with you might be muffins, dry cereal, bagels, breakfast bars, or granola. Protein options might be cheese, peanut butter, or nuts. For fruit, you could do bananas, strawberries, oranges, any type of dried fruit such as raisins, or just grab a juice box. Dairy could be milk, chocolate milk boxes, yogurt, or string cheese. The chocolate milk boxes often come, they're just shelf stable, and then you refrigerate them, but that could be a really good option of something to take that's nutritionally good for you. So again, bring a cooler if you're going to be out a while so you can have a bigger variety of nutrients by having the ability to bring foods that need to be kept cold. What you eat and how much you eat will depend on how much time you have and how long you're going to be playing for. So if you have more time between matches and plenty of time to eat, you could bring like store-bought or homemade Lunchables. So just pack your favorite crackers, some cheese, and whatever lunch meat you prefer, and you can have a little mini meal. Or you could do peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or Uncrustables. If you bring an Uncrustable frozen, that can kind of double as an ice pack to help keep the other foods cool. You could do the mini bagels with cream cheese. And then if you don't have a lot of time, or if you don't need a bigger snack or want that much, you can just do something like a handful of trail mix or pretzels or dried fruit. And that may be enough just to give you that little extra boost of energy while you're out there. There's nothing extra special about a protein bar, and there's likely not one that's better than another. It can just be a really quick and easy way of getting a nutrient-dense snack that doesn't take a lot of time to eat. But I would keep in mind that some protein bars have a lot of extra protein, and that's likely not necessary. If you're eating balanced meals throughout the day and you're having snacks and you're making sure that you're being mindful about how much protein you're having at each meal and snack, you're probably getting enough, and you don't need that protein bar to fill in any gaps. Now, all protein bars are going to have some protein, which is fine, but they just don't need to contain massive amounts to be the best choice. And sometimes just a plain old granola bar is just fine. It really just depends on the moment and what you need in that moment. So you could also do bananas, orange slices, and apples. And then sometimes you might not have time to eat, or you might not feel like eating anything. And in those cases, you can rely on sports drinks or even juice boxes sometimes just for that kind of quick pick-me-up. And again, you can freeze the juice boxes ahead of time, and those can also double as an ice pack. Athletes always want to know what's the best food that they can eat. And really, a lot of times it just comes down to personal preference and what works for that particular athlete. So what works for one athlete may not work for another. Some athletes swear by a peanut butter and jelly sandwich before they train, and others can't tolerate anything more than a banana. Some athletes love cereal with milk before playing, but others don't feel like they can tolerate milk before activity. So there really is no right or wrong. It just comes down to what works for each athlete. So you want to find what's best tolerated for you. And you do that by playing around with different amounts of foods while you're practicing, so that when it comes time for a match, you know exactly what's going to make you feel well energized and ready to go. You can kind of think of it as training your gut. So just like you're going to practice, you're practicing what your body can and can't handle. And when in doubt, just start with eating throughout the day by having a meal or snack just every 2 to 3 hours. By eating on a regular basis, you'll prevent getting overly hungry, which can make it hard to make balanced choices. And the same is true for drinking. It's hard to know how much water will help each individual athlete feel hydrated, but if you drink water early and often, it'll prevent any signs of dehydration, such as feeling thirsty or having a headache. So you always want to think about what you're eating before your activity, during activity, and post-activity. So what should you refuel with? Well, ideally you want to try to eat or drink something within 30 minutes after activity. If it's longer than that, that's still okay. It's important to refuel at some point though, and if possible, you want to try to aim for sooner than later. An ideal refueling snack would be something that consists of carbohydrates and protein. That carbohydrates that we've been talking about, that replaces the muscle glycogen, and then the protein will help with that repair. So good choices could include a turkey or grilled cheese sandwich, a slice of pizza, cottage cheese and fruit, or cheese and crackers, or chocolate milk. And chocolate milk is actually one of the best options. Sometimes athletes don't feel hungry or don't want to eat right away after playing, so a drink may be better tolerated. Chocolate milk not only has a high percentage of water, but it also has an ideal combination of carbohydrates and whey protein to replenish the muscles, and gives us a good dose of calcium and vitamins A and D. So in the words of Nancy Clark, it's important to remember that a person can only compete at their best if they can train at their best, and they can only train at their best if on a daily basis they are fueling at your best. And then a few good resources. The American College of Sports Medicine currently has a tip sheet for how to stay active at home. You can also just search nutrition and find some good nutrition tips and articles. The Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is another good resource. Under that is SCAN, which stands for Sports and Cardiovascular Nutrition. And they have a lot of helpful information on there as well. And you can also find a board certified specialist in sports nutrition in your area if you want to work with a sports dietitian on an individual basis. And then Nancy Clark, who I just referenced, she is a really well-known dietitian who specializes in sports nutrition, and she's worked with numerous athletes and athletic teams. She's also written a book called the Sports Nutrition Guidebook, which is a great resource. I think that's now in its 6th edition, and she has just lots of helpful information on her website. Well, thank you guys. Does anyone have any questions?
Okay, I'll be kicking off the questions and we'll see if that stirs anything else up. But thank you so much for all that great information. So to kick off the questions, what if an athlete shares that they can't eat or don't want to eat before activity? I know you said you could split up your meals, but would a sports drink or something else be sufficient during that time?
Yeah, that's a great question, and a lot of a really common question too, and a lot of athletes feel that way. And I would just recommend, yeah, you can definitely try a sports drink, depending on what time of day it is. If it's in the morning, that's harder to space out. Maybe it's just at least trialing to have a little bit of something before. But even if people don't want to eat right before activity, if you can try an hour before activity or an hour and a half before activity, and just start with something small, even if it's a handful of crackers or pretzels, or I would do something that's like a carbohydrate, just so that it's easy to digest and absorb and then can give you that energy, and then really just start playing around with it. So again, I've had lots of athletes that have said, I cannot eat anything before, but then we play around with some different amounts and different types of foods, and then they over time find that there are certain things that they can tolerate.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for that. It looks like we have a few more that came in as well. Our next question is, any advice for athletes who take medication that suppresses any appetites?
Yeah, that's really tough too, because then they can't really listen to hunger cues, which is what we really encourage, everyone to do. So in that case, I would try to recommend probably eating at least every 3 to 4 hours. So a lot of people that are taking those medications may not get hungry for lunch, but we know that it's in their body's best interest to still at least have something at that time. Now, with that being said, they may not have as big of a meal at lunchtime if they're not as hungry, because sometimes when those medications wear off, then athletes will get more hungry later on in the day and will be able to fill their nutrient needs at that time. But it is good to at least put some fuel in the tank, especially if you're going to have an afternoon workout. So, it just wouldn't be ideal from a sports nutrition standpoint to go to a practice when you've only had breakfast that day and haven't had lunch or an afternoon snack. So I would try to at least get something in, even if it's not necessarily as big of a meal as they would otherwise have had.
Okay, great insight. Our next question is jumping over to the water topic. And when you drank a few glasses of, or when you say you drank a few glasses of water before an activity, what if it's super early in the morning?
Yeah, definitely harder at that time to get as much in. And hydration is one of those things that, you do want to make sure you're hydrated on a regular basis too. So, it's not something we want to say, oh, I have a game today or a match today, so I'm going to, drink a bunch of water today. If you're hydrated on a day in and day out basis, that will help for those early morning workouts and matches when you don't have a lot of time to drink a ton before. So in that case, if possible, trying to get up a little bit earlier just to make sure that you are eating and drinking something. But if you don't have, 2 hours before or even an hour before, just trying to take some sips of water while you're on the way to the match. And then again, just drinking while you're there.
Okay, perfect. We had a question come in as well, as far as what's your thoughts on pre and post workout supplements?
So, I'm not sure what they're talking about as far as supplements go. There's nothing that we can get from a supplement that we can't get from food. So I think my go-tos are always carbohydrates and protein. Obviously we need some fat as well, but from a post-exercise standpoint, the research really backs the carbohydrates and the protein and that combination together as far as what to have. So if you find a supplement that contains both of those, that's perfectly fine. You do want to make sure that your supplement is regulated by the FDA so that it actually contains what it says it contains. And those things would be fine to do before an event as well. Anything that contains some carbohydrates and some protein. But that's why chocolate milk is good too, because we know what it is, we know what's in there, and then we know it has a good ratio of carbohydrates to protein.
Okay, perfect. Well, that probably answered a lot of questions for some people there with supplements. How much is a serving of fruits and vegetables?
So like a fresh fruit, an apple, an orange, something like that would be a serving. Otherwise, like a half a cup of juice would be a serving, or a cup of any like fresh fruits. So a cup of watermelon, cantaloupe, strawberries, grapes, things like that.
Okay, perfect. As far as snacks such as yogurt, how much is too much sugar in grams with that?
I don't necessarily worry about that. We do know that yogurt and milk both contain sugar. Fruit does too. But that's not really where like the guidelines are worried about the sugar coming from. It's really from the extra sugars in other foods. So, like I said, I mean, we know that yogurt's going to contain some sugar, and really from an athletic standpoint, again, that's going to be what fuels your muscles. So I really don't recommend monitoring the grams of sugar in anything. With that being said, you could definitely be mindful. And if you do feel like you have a diet that does overall have high amounts of sugar, then it would be perfectly fine to just look for one that has a little bit less than others.
Okay, I like the mindfulness.
Yeah.
Well, I think that wraps up our questions there. So I'm going to pass it back to Marissa.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you so much, Melissa. Great information. Again, as our players and athletes are getting back on the court and getting ready to start with competition as we roll into June 1st, I think it's just great to be mindful of, what they are putting in their bodies to help, fuel them to be at their top level.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to participate in our Serving Our Athletes webinar series. If you would like to review any of the past recordings, they can be found on USTA.com on our Serving Our Athletes news page. Thanks, Melissa. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.